Religion isn't about beliefs. It's about belonging, purpose, and power. It can build empires or topple them, bring people together or tear them apart. In short, religion is an identity, and often a foundational one that cleaves close to the heart of its adherents. But how do you weave such complexity into your world building? Today, I'm going to explore that question and break it down in actionable steps with another episode of World Building Blueprints from Just-in-Time World Building with your host, Marie Mullaney. Let's start with a big question. What is identity? At its core, identity is about belonging. It answers the fundamental questions: who am I? And who are we? Identity forms the foundation of how individuals and groups see themselves and interact with the world around them. In world building, identity is the scaffolding upon which believable societies are built. It defines not only how groups within a culture perceive themselves, but also how they interact with others and respond to external challenges. However, identities aren't static or superficial. They're dynamic forces that shape motivation, loyalty, and conflict. Consider a proud warrior caste bound by tradition, a secretive guild of mages preserving arcane knowledge, or a community of rebels fighting for survival against an oppressive regime. Each identity not only defines its members, but also drives their actions, providing your characters with compelling reasons to act and your stories with a rich narrative direction to unfold. It is important to understand that identities have both internal and external definitions. Internal is how members of the identity see themselves, what name or names they use for their identity, and who they see as part of their group. The identity will also have a self-perception of their core values and the role they play in a society, for example, caretaker, warrior, ruler, or outcast. The external definition of the identity is the view that those outside the identity have of those within the identity. Outsiders might use different names, including slurs. They might hold certain stereotypes about members of the identity or apply certain symbols to those who claim the identity. This conflict between internal and external definition of identity is a great source of cultural and thus narrative tension. Remember, identities exist as intersecting lines on our cultural model, as we defined in earlier episodes of this podcast. An identity might have core beliefs that conflict with those of the larger culture, leading to incredible tension as the two worldviews clash. Or, if you go higher up in the cultural circles, an identity might have a separate legal code under which its members are judged, leading to less cultural tension, but more personal tension, as members of the identity battle in the courts with those outside the identity. And that's why identity is very important for the cultural world builder to understand. Different identities within a culture form different subcultures that create tension and narrative drama within a single culture. Religion, however, is a special kind of identity. It doesn't just tell people who they are, it tells them why they are. Many religions strive to provide answers to life's biggest questions. Why are we here? What happens after we die? What is our purpose? These answers create a powerful sense of meaning and belonging, making such religions one of the most compelling identities in a culture. So with identity as our starting point, let's zoom in on that fascinating form of identity, religion, a force that doesn't just shape its adherents, but defines their worldview. If you've enjoyed this discussion of identity, hit the thumbs up button and let's explore religion as a subculture. Here's where world building gets really interesting. While religion is an identity, it's also a subculture, a layer within the broader culture that operates alongside secular beliefs and practices. Even in societies where religion dominates, culture is more than just faith. Take ancient Greece, for example. Greek religion, the tales of Zeus, Athena, and Poseidon, were deeply entwined with Greek life. But Greek culture also included philosophy, politics, art, and science that weren't connected to the religion. As a world builder, treating religion as a subculture helps you create depth. It allows you to explore how religion interacts with other identities like gender, profession, or nationality. It also opens up the possibilities for conflict between religion and culture, between religious factions, or even between individual faith and societal expectations. And we will explore those more in a future episode of this podcast. Now, in previous episodes of this podcast, we discussed the cultural 7 circles model in depth and how to use that for subcultures. And you can use this as a simple means for defining your religion. However, a religion is often more than just a subculture. For many people, it is a foundational identity. So, in this episode and the ones that follow it, we'll explore creating a religion in detail, including the divine focus, the hierarchical tension, and religion's role in politics and narrative tension. Before we continue, let's take a moment to talk about how you can get even more out of this podcast. If you're enjoying World Building Blueprints and want to dive deeper, members of the Just-in-Time World Building YouTube channel get exclusive access to the worksheets we discuss in every episode. From the Build It in Straw tier to the Build It in Stone tier, you'll get access to worksheets which helps you define identities, religions, cultures, economics, and more in your world. It's a great way to turn these ideas into actionable steps that will help you create great stories. So check out the perks on Just-in-Time World Building, and thank you for supporting the show to those of you who are members already. That being said, I appreciate every listener and viewer of this podcast. I would not have a channel at all if it wasn't for you, my audience. So thank you very much, all of you, for listening. Okay, and back to the show. With religion as a subculture defined, it's time to look closer at the identity of a religion itself. Who are its followers, and how do they see themselves, and how are they perceived by others? To design a compelling religion in your world, you need to explore its identity from multiple perspectives. A religion is not just a set of rituals or dogma. It's a dynamic, living identity that defines how its members see themselves and how others perceive them and how they interact with a broader culture. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of religion, like the divine focus or the clergy or their vestments, let's break the religion as an identity down into actionable questions you can use to determine the role religion plays within the culture you're designing. First, how does religion define itself internally? Every religion has an internal sense of identity, a shared understanding of who its followers are and what they stand for. This internal definition shapes how members relate to one another and their place in the world. What do its followers call themselves? The name adherents use for their religion are significant. A name often reflects core values or aspirations. Are they children of the light, keepers of the flame, or simply the chosen ones? Think about how these names evoke pride, unity, or divine purpose. What values does the religion hold sacred? Core values provide cohesion to a religion. They might include virtues like compassion, courage, purity, or loyalty. Sacred beliefs could be aspirational, for example, striving for enlightenment, or prescriptive, for example, avoiding sin or forbidden practices. In a fantastical world, a sun-worshipping religion might prioritize honesty and transparency, reflecting the sun's symbolic association with truth and illumination. And we'll delve much deeper into these values in the next episode of this podcast, so make sure you stay tuned for that. What role do members of the religion see themselves playing in the world? Followers might see themselves as caretakers of creation, as warriors against evil, or as intermediaries between the divine and mortal realms. This perception can deeply influence the religion's practices, such as protecting sacred sites or undertaking missionary work. For example, a nomadic religion might view its adherents as seekers of balance, guiding them to maintain harmony between the lands they traverse and the spirits that inhabit those lands. So that's the definition of the religion internally. But then you should also consider, how is the religion seen from the external side, from the outgroup, as it were? A religion does not exist in isolation. Outsiders often have their own perceptions, labels, and stereotypes, which can lead to misunderstandings, tension, and even outright conflict. So, how do outsiders view the religion? These perceptions can range from respectful to dismissive, from fear to admiration. These views often stem from cultural biases, historical interactions, or propaganda. For example, a religion known internally as guardians of the veil might be viewed externally as a dangerous cult meddling with forbidden magic. Externally, they might be called veil rippers or veiled serpents by those outside of their religion. What stereotypes exist about the followers of this religion? Stereotypes can often shape how religion is treated within a society. Are the adherents of the religion seen as austere and moralistic, or as fanatical and untrustworthy? For example, members of a strict ascetic religion might be admired for their discipline, but mocked for their perceived self-righteousness. Is the religion feared, respected, or mocked? The external perceptions of a religion determines its social standing. A religion viewed as dangerous or subversive might be oppressed or persecuted, while one perceived as wise and just might wield significant secular power. A religion might also be seen as false and its adherents mercilessly mocked, but mostly regarded as harmless. So that's all of the external views and questions that you should consider when defining your religion. But how does the religion interact with a broader culture? And where can you generate narrative tension? A religion's relationship within the larger culture is critical to understanding its role in society. And this dynamic creates a great deal of opportunity for both a writer and somebody who runs games in a world. So let's take a look at those conflict points between the religion and the culture. So the first question is, does the religion reinforce the cultural values? A religion that aligns with the dominant culture often enjoys greater acceptance and stability. It may act as a unifying force, promoting shared values and traditions and thus social cohesion within the culture. For example, a warrior culture might embrace a religion that venerates gods of strength and honor, integrating its rituals into festivals, oaths, and laws. But a religion can also challenge cultural values, and a religion that opposes or critiques societal norms can become a source of conflict or reform or both. For example, a pacifist faith in a militaristic empire might provoke resentment among the ruling elite while inspiring hope among the oppressed and conquered nations. And that is why you should consider whether the religion creates friction or harmony. Tension arises when a religion's practices or beliefs clash with broader societal expectations. Alternatively, a religion might serve as a bridge between conflicting cultural groups, fostering understanding and cooperation. Let's consider some historical examples of this kind of reinforcement and rejection of various religions' core beliefs and the tension they created within their broader culture. And we'll start with Buddhism in Imperial China. Buddhism venerates detachment from material possessions and the renunciation of worldly life, which often clashed with Confucian ideals in Imperial China. Confucianism emphasizes familial loyalty, filial piety, and social hierarchy, values that are at odds with Buddhist monasticism and its celibate lifestyle. In the Huqiang era, 841 to 845, this conflict was one of the reasons for the persecution of Buddhism by Emperor Wuzong of the Tang dynasty, who closed monasteries and confiscated temple lands to reinforce Confucian and Taoist traditions. While there are other reasons for this conflict, it is notable that Confucian intellectuals such as Han Yu railed against Buddhism for undermining the social structure of China at this time. A world builder could draw on this conflict to create narrative tension between a worldview espoused by the secular philosophy of a culture and a new religious sect entering that culture from a neighbor. Of course, sometimes it's not the religious sect peacefully entering a culture, but the conflict of war that also brings new religions. And that brings us to our second historical example, that of the Druids and the Romans. The Druids, religious leaders of the Celtic societies, represented a unifying cultural force in Gaul and Britain. Their practices, including some human sacrifices and other mysterious rites, were viewed as barbaric and dangerous by the Roman Empire. Please bear in mind that the only writings that we have about the Druids are the Roman writings, who were writing about them from the perspective of the enemy, so there is some bias in the Roman writing. Okay, with that caveat out of the way, the Druids' influence over local tribes obviously posed a threat to Roman political control, and so Roman suppression of the Druids under Emperor Claudius in the 1st century, including the destruction of the sacred groves and bans on their religious practices. And a world builder could create a similar situation where an empire conquers a neighboring nation and suppresses the local religion, leading to immense narrative tension. But sometimes it's not about external pressure, but about religious sects breaking ranks. For example, consider the cult of Aten in ancient Egypt. Pharaoh Akhenaten attempted to institute the monotheistic worship of Aten, the sun disk, disrupting the traditional Egyptian polytheism. This led to conflict with the powerful priesthood of Amun and widespread resistance from the populace accustomed to worshipping many gods. Akhenaten reigned in the 14th century BCE, and he attempted to establish this cult of Aten. But in the subsequent centuries, his successors, including Tutankhamun, restored polytheism. And this conflict between Aten and polytheism creates a rich environment for cultural conflict. And from a world-building perspective, this kind of set is a delight to work with for creating potential plot points. There will be those who support the new beliefs and those who cling to the old. And as this is all within a single culture, you can focus purely on the internal conflict rather than worrying about the additional conflict of invasion and conquest. I hope you can see from these examples that religion holds great potential to create conflict within a culture, and that it helps you build a world that feels rich, deep, and real. By considering these perspectives, you can craft a religion that feels alive and integral not only to your world, but also to your plot. Now that we've explored the identity of religion, from its internal self-definition to its external perceptions and its potential conflict with a larger culture, it's time to dive into the heart of what makes a religion truly unique, its divine focus, core beliefs, and myths. And that is exactly what we'll do in next month's episode of World Building Blueprints. Before we go, I'd like to give a huge thanks to my members for sponsoring this podcast, and a special shout out to Lupex Lakeshire, Katie Kofi Mug, and Tony Lamano, just-in-timers of the Build It in Stone level, and Pablo Barrios, Patricio, Aya Shimimaru, Tiffany Felix, and Dylan Batera, just-in-timers of the Build It in Wood level. Your support makes this podcast possible, and I am so grateful for it. And on that note, I will see you soon for another episode. Remember, build what you need, when you need it, and happy world building.